Hi there, everyone, and welcome to Arden Creative Studio. My name is Sara, and I'm absolutely delighted that you're joining me today. So, you may be noticing, especially if you are one of our regular live viewers, that we're not live today. And we've got a lot of different travel schedules going on, of course, being summer. So, we thought we would bring you a pre recorded workshop instead. And so today I'm going to share with you a scrapbook page as well as a handmade card. Both of these are going to be using the absolutely gorgeous Katy Percy Christmas Cheer collection in combination with some really easy, fast, and fun distressing techniques. So we're going to be talking about paint splattering. We're going to do some direct to paper edging and inking. I'll also talk about paper tearing. All of these are just classic techniques, and they go really, really well with pattern papers that already have kind of a vintage or nostalgia themed design. Super simple to do and a great way to cool down, especially if the temperatures are soaring where you live as well. Alrighty, I'm going to turn down my camera and we can take a look. Let's start first of all with our album page, and then we can look at our card. I'll show you the different products that I'm working with today, and then we can jump into our demos. So first of all, I've got a 12 by 12 layout here. I'm combining several different pattern papers, 1, 2, 3. I've got this beautiful torn edge here in the background. I'm also incorporating 3 different photo sizes and shapes to create some easy balance on my page. And I've got some very simple journaling, both ephemera journaling, also some handwritten journaling, and then lots of gorgeous embellishments on here too. And again, this is all part of the Christmas Cheer collection. So we're going to be talking about doing some layering and this beautiful spattering and distressing on here. Now let me bring in the card again. We can look at this as well. And this card also features some of that easy distressing with that paint splattering, edging along here. I've also incorporated some rub-ons, which are part of the collection too, and then layering up with some ephemera on here. So we've got a lot going on. All of the techniques are super simple to do, and that's also part of the fun. Alrighty, so let's take a look at the supplies that I'm working with. Now for the card and the page, I'm going to be using the Christmas Cheer paper pad. And you can see swatches of all of the different designs on here. And this is where you can really get a sense of how cohesive this collection is. So you've got 2 sheets each of the 12 by 12 patterned papers. And you'll notice that there's already a really beautiful collage, kind of faux texture. You've got lots of layers on here. They are double-sided, which makes it really easy to mix and match your designs. I think this is stunning. You can see, of course, that we've got some faux splattering on here as well. Let's see, we've got the trees pattern paper. Some of these are all over designs, and that, of course, makes it really easy to create beautiful backgrounds. Here's one of my favorites. I love the deer. And then on the back, you've got that fun dot. Again, some more collaging. Now, when we get to the back here, you'll notice that you've also got some what they call kiss cut designs. So these will just pop right out of the backing sheet. You've got tags, you've got labels, you've got some accent sentiments back here. You've got more sentiments, large and small. This sheet, by the way, and you've got 2 of those too, these are perfect for card making. So if you are a Christmas card maker, this is an absolute treasure. You've got all of these large sentiments and then also some smaller words in here you can mix and match. So that's the base. This is the basis of both my card and my layout. So I'm going to be mixing and matching these different designs. A couple of other things that I will also be using here. I felt like the last live I did earlier this month, I was very restrained. I wasn't going with all of the different products in the collection. This time I just couldn't help myself, and I used pretty much everything else that I didn't use for the last live. So I've got the laser cuts. I've got the 2 different kinds of laser cuts. So the essentials and the foliage. I love adding little bits of foliage to create kind of an accent around my focals. So I would call this essential as well. But I love the foliage. I also love all of these fun little postage marks. You've got some more words and sentiments in here, borders as well. And then I'm also using, oops, hold on. I'm going to grab it over here. Very important. I love the rub-ons. And you've got lots of different designs in here. So some focals, accent pieces, words, and little background snippets there too. And last but not least, the epoxy stickers. And I love just adding a couple of these here and there as little finishing touches to my project. Okay, so let's come back to our album page. I'm going to move these to one side here. And again, I'm going to show you the pattern papers that I'm working with, and then we can get into the distressing. So I've got 3 different designs here. I've got my background, which is this beautiful plaid, and then I've got a wreath pattern paper and then the red paper on top. So starting with the bottom, here's my base piece, and you can see that there's already some distressing on here. So we've got not just like a clean plaid design, you've got some over and under layering here, some distressing and scuffing, and some faux texture, which gives me a really nice head start. Then layered on top, I've got this wreath paper. Now, I think with wreath pattern designs, tell me if I'm the only one, I sometimes will look at a design like this and I limit myself immediately. I think that I have to take like one focal photo and just put it in the middle and then call it good. But you can expand beyond this. You can do lots of other different things with a wreath focal design. So that was my challenge to myself. And then also on top of that, I have this other distressed, kind of pre-distressed, faux distressed, gorgeous, gorgeous sheet here. So these are the 3 papers that I am working with to start. So beginning with my background sheet, this I've left as a 12 by 12. Now the wreath pattern paper I've trimmed down to be about 10.5 inches square. So I wanted this to fit inside the frame, if you will, of that plaid, which I've spattered with white paint. And then the paper on top, this sheet here, I've torn down to be about a 6-inch square. So that's what I'm going to start with here, and then we'll talk about the different ways you can distress your paper and the different ways that I've chosen to distress my paper. So to create a 6-inch square from this, from my mat, and with torn edges, there are a couple of different ways you can do this. Now, when I'm tearing paper, I'm doing kind of a free-form design with this. I'm not tearing it up against an edge. You can do this, but a couple of techniques when you're tearing. So if I'm tearing my paper toward me, you'll notice that it's revealing the white core of the center of the paper. So this is going to give you an instant edge and kind of a matte, if you will. So if I flip this over and we position this on here, you can see you've already got a nice difference between those 2 pattern papers to create some contrast. If you want that white core, that's how you're going to tear it. Now, if you don't want the white core, then you will tear the paper away from you, or you can simply flip it over and tear the other side toward you. So I wanted to demonstrate this so that you can see that you've got a couple of different options when it comes to tearing. So now you can see I have no white edge going along here. So just depends on which look you want to go for. I tore the paper away from me and then realized because I was edging it with an ink pad, it kind of doesn't matter. But it may for whatever design you're working with. You can also, if you like a more controlled tear against a straight edge. So this will still give you your white core showing through, but you've got a really straight, still torn, but straight and more linear effect. Again, just depends on what you're going for. So let's see, I'm going to go ahead and tear the other side here. And then we can get into some distressing. All right. Pull this bit off here too. Now I've got all kinds of really fun borders that I can work with. I'm going to set those to one side just for now. And let's look at our splattering technique, our paint splattering technique. So for this, all you need, a couple of things. I'm going to be working on a little mat here. You can put your paint onto your craft mat if you want to, but this is a little bit less cleanup. So a couple of tools that I need to have on hand, of course, some paint. And I'm using not a bright white paint. This is called Heavy Cream. This is from Paper Artsy. And the important thing to note about it is that it is an acrylic paint and also that it's an opaque paint. Sometimes acrylic paints will be translucent or semi-translucent, but for something like this, on this background, I want it to be opaque. So that's something I'm taking note of. And I do want it to be an acrylic paint for this technique rather than a watercolor. I also need to have some water on hand. I've got a mister bottle. I've got a little jar with water for my brush. And then I need my brush to do my splattering with. So I like to work with a water brush. You can also use a regular paintbrush. You can also use, let's see, I've got all kinds of things off to one side. You can use a wide bristle brush if you want. You can also use a splattering brush like this. And I'll show you some of these as we go throughout today. So first thing I'm going to do is shake up my paint bottle. This is one that I use a lot. So I'm not sure that I have a whole lot left in here. I'm going to be pretty sparing. So pop a little bit of this down. And then I'm going to add a little bit of water here just to make it a little bit more fluid. Okay, this may be tricky to see, white on white. Let's see, can I angle that? There, you can see it. And from here, what I'll do is hold my brush perpendicular to my surface, and then I'm going to tap the barrel of the brush. Now, please do cover your work surface if you're working on your dining room table, because this can go in lots of places. Now, the more water you use, the more diluted your paint will be. And this is a pretty simple way to add a really nice touch of texture and dimension. And then you just need to let this dry. So one thing I want to do, you can see it on that red pattern paper, but I think it's also fun to see it maybe on something a little bit more dramatic. So I've got some of Arden's pitch black cardstock here. And when I tap this on here, I think you can really see how pretty for a background of like a starry night, snowy night. Have a look. So pretty and so easy to do. And this won't take very long to dry. You do want to give it some dry time. You can, if you've got a heat tool, give it a quick zip zap, and then you can speed up that drying time. Okay, so I'm going to mop this up a little bit over here. And then from here, let's come back to our red piece. And let's also talk about doing some inking along the edges here, which is what I've done with my piece that I've got on my album page. Move that aside there too. And I'm using a gold pigment ink pad. And the one that I'm using is from Spectrum Noir from Crafter's Companion. There are lots of different pigment ink pads out there, and it doesn't really matter which brand you're using. One thing you do want to take care of, though, when you're working with a metallic pigment ink pad, they dry more slowly than a dye-based ink pad. And so just be aware of that. So when I'm inking, I'm going to hold this in one hand, and I'm going to just gently rub the ink pad along the edge. And I think you can already see some of that shine on there, as well as how it's emphasizing that torn edge. Now, depending on how new your ink pad is, it may be juicier than mine. I love this one because it's just the right amount of juiciness. I use it a lot, and so it's not brand new, it's not super juicy, which means that it gives me a slightly more muted effect. Okay, scuffling that around on there. Let's bring in, let me see, do I have a piece of this white paper? So that you can really see that beautiful, soft shaded edge on there. And depending on how much into the paper you're inking, you can get even a softer effect there too. So that is a really simple way, toss that over there, a really simple way of adding some nice texture around on your torn edges. Now, with this being torn up against a ruler, I'm going to have a straighter line on there. Let me see with one of these where it's a bit more free form. Let's have a look here. Again, that's going to give you some really soft and pretty effects on there. Kind of a verdigris effect. On the other side, you can take advantage of that white core showing through and even get some more color and variation on there. So that's with your inking technique, your spattering technique and your inking technique. I'm going to bring back in my layout and we can talk a little bit more about the layout itself. Now I've got all of my papers laying everywhere. I have to gently move things over. Okay, so with my layout here in the places where I'm doing my spattering and distressing on the background, so I've used white paint to splatter all over the background, really keeping most of it around those edges. Now, a couple of things I want to show you. I'm going to bring this up. I've got some white spattering on here, on top of which I've added a rub-on. Here's the thing with rub-ons, and I'll do a little demo when we get to our card. When you've got a rub-on, that is going to be a non-porous surface. So what I recommend you do is do your splattering first, then let that dry and do your rub-on on top of that. If you splatter on top of a rub-on, it won't absorb. So it will either, you'll need to let it dry, set to dry, or you can blot it off and remove that. So if you want to incorporate the spatters underneath your rub-on, just do that part first. Then I've also got my square cut piece of that wreath patterned paper, and I've cut this to 10.5 inches square. And I've edged along the sides here also with some of that white paint, and I'll show you that in just a second too. And I've got a little trick for a way to do that easily. And I didn't do any splattering on this sheet. Instead, I've added some rub-ons. I've got a layered rub-on. I've got this text with the star on top. I've got my square piece of inked and paint splattered paper on top here, and this gorgeous tag. And then I've got my 3 photos. Now I want to talk about the photos, and I'm going to come back to this wreath pattern paper. And remember, I was challenged by thinking I need to just plop something right in the middle. Oh, a picture of a wreath. That's really original, Sarah. So I've got my square photo that I've got possibly in the center. And then I've added a couple of other photos with some differing shapes and sizes. So this is like a 4-inch square. I've also got another smaller photo, which I've trimmed down. And then I had another photograph here, and this is a scenery photo, which I could have included the whole thing, but I really wanted to focus just on this Christmas tree here. So my theme for the page was Advent. So all of the wonderful things leading up to Christmas at our house, which includes the Advent wreath. It also includes setting up a Christmas tree. And of course, I've got one of my cats here is snoozing innocently next to the tree, not climbing on it, fortunately. And I've also trimmed down this photo of the Christmas market because I just wanted to focus on that tree here. And again, the variation of those photos really helps to create a nice collage here in the center. And it's nicely balanced. So they're all different sizes. They're different shapes from square to the 2 rectangular going horizontal and vertical. And then I've just got them all matted up on some white cardstock and placed overlapping. Now going across the center is one of the ephemera pieces, and this is popped up with some foam tape. So that's really creating a nice collage that's grouped all in the center. Overlapping will lead your eye through all of those pieces. And then I've got some additional layers here too with that foliage, beautiful foliage ephemera. This is printed on it and this is overlapping, coming kind of tucked underneath here. I've got some rub-ons as well overlapping, and then I've got a tag. This is from that the 12 by 12 paper pack. So let's have a look here at this tag. And I've got one that I've punched out already. And from here, again, a nice way to add some color and a little bit of definition is just to do some simple inking around the outside edges here. Again, with that gold ink pad. Now this already has some shading around it, this tag. So I'm kind of just emphasizing this. And then for the tag top, I've got a little bit of gingham ribbon on here, but I've also added one of the epoxy stickers. And there are lots of different kinds on here, but there are some with the with sentiments on them. Let me pull these out. You can see. And this just makes a really nice way to accent the top of your tag. And then you can tuck a ribbon underneath there if you want to. And that's what I've done here. And just slip this underneath that beautiful torn and inked patterned paper. So that's where my layers are coming from on here. With the rub-ons, of course, you can layer one rub-on on top of another. And that's what I've done here with the star overlapping the text. And then down here with the postage overlapping the Christmas ornaments. All right, so then also with our layout, last little thing I want to point out on here, I do always like to urge myself to add in my own handwriting on my scrapbook pages. I'm not a huge fan of my own handwriting like a lot of people, but this is a simple way to add in some handwriting onto a layout as well. Now, a facing page, if you're doing double page spreads, could give some more background explanation behind the photos on here and why they're important during our Advent or lead up to Christmas time with our wreath and our wonderful cat, our tree in the background, and then of course, Hamburg's Christmas market. So if you are ever in Hamburg around the winter time, you can come to our city center and enjoy a beautiful lit up Christmas tree and maybe even some, well, I can recommend the potato pancakes or Kartoffelpuffer, which are absolutely delicious and wonderful to have at a Christmas market. So that's the kind of thing that I could add into my journaling if I was putting it on the facing page, which is generally how I like to do my double page spreads. Okay, so we've done our splattering, we've done our inking. Let's have a look again at our card, and we can talk about a few techniques going on over here too. Now, again, with the card, as with the layout, I'm working with those 12 by 12 pattern papers, and I've inked around, or excuse me, I've added the pattern paper right to my card blank. And this is a 5 by 7 inch top fold card blank. Covered this with my pattern paper and then added this striped paper design right on top. Now I want to bring in this paper because I want you to see again, we've got some more faux distressing on here, but have a look between the difference between the spattered and the non-spattered. So I think you can start to see where this is really emphasizing something that already has some beautiful distressing on it too. Okay, now from here, let's take a look at doing some edging along here. I've edged along my card front as well as this patterned piece, and I'm also using my paint for this. So let's take a look here. Now, a couple of different ways you can edge your paper. You may have some craft sponges in your stash. You may have run out of them like I frequently do. So I'll just cut apart a kitchen sponge You can also use your finger for this too. So if you don't mind having painty hands, that's a way to go. So I'm just going to load this up with my paint and come along the edges like so. And you can do quite heavy edging, same thing as with your ink pads, or you can go for a lighter touch. Let's see if I can bring back in my black cardstock here. And you can see around those edges and how nicely that creates a frame around there. So again, working with those with an acrylic paint and with some kind of sponge or applicator, again, you can use your finger. That will do the trick there too. Now let's talk about some other splattering options here too. So I've got a little bit of paint left on my palette, and I've mentioned what I'm using is my water brush. Some folks also like to use a fan style distress brush. This can also work. Pick this up here, maybe add a little bit more water. And this can give you a nice fine effect. I think I even need more water for this. This is very, very gentle misting. So let me bring that up and you can see the difference between that and the larger dots. So you've got that as an option. You can also use something wider, a brush like this. You can use an old toothbrush. This is also going to give you quite a fine splattering effect. So lots of different ways that you can go about this, just depending on whether you want something quite fine, use these brushes. If you want something a little bit more, a little bit thicker in the dots, let's see, I'll bring this back in and you can see that's going to be with one of your water brushes. Let's give a comparison here. You can see the difference between those two. So lots of different ways that you can add a different effect using your acrylic paints. Okay, this is going to require a little bit more cleanup, but that's fine. Alrighty, so from here, another thing that I wanted to share with you too are the rub-ons. So I'm going to bring this piece back in. Again, I'm moving things all over the place. Let's bring in this piece instead. And let's talk about our rub-ons. So with your rub-ons, you've got a couple of different options. Now, you've got lots of different styles in this rub-on set. And I'll show you just a couple of the sheets that you've got in here. When you're using your rub-ons, you're going to want to grab a pair of scissors and trim out the image that you want from the main piece. When you do that, keep the design on the liner. Don't remove that liner until you're ready to apply your rub-on. One thing I want to point out with this sheet in particular, which is where I got this from, let's try and angle this so that you can see, hopefully. There are some white snowflakes printed on here. So when you're getting ready to cut out your images, do have an eye out for those white snowflakes, because you definitely will want to not chop right into them, but instead to use them for your project. Actually, I think this might be dry. Let's do our rub-on on top of the spattering. Okay, so I'm going to take this off here. Carefully, not handling the back of this. I'm holding on to the edges. And then let's just place this right down here on the sheet. Inside the rub-on set, you will have an applicator. Looks like a popsicle stick or an ice lolly stick or a craft stick. I think it has lots of different names. And this is what you're going to apply your rub-on with. So gentle but firm burnishing. And make sure that you come around all of the edges, especially around the foliage, because you want to make sure that that transfers. Now, as I'm doing this, I'm going to lift this up gently. If it turns out I haven't transferred everything, I can just pop the piece back down. Come around here and lift this up. You do want to make sure that your paint is dry before you do this. All right, and there we go. So now I've got my image placed on top of that beautiful misty splattering with my paint edged background here. So I think I got the start to a nice card. Now you can also do some overlapping of your rub-ons. And this is another fun way to add some texture. So let's see, I'm just going to chop out these postage notes. I love using rub-ons because they add such an easy bit of design and dimension without adding bulk. So I've got my postage pieces here, and let's just overlap this right on top. So you can layer rub-ons one on top of the other. And the first time I thought to do this, I thought, oh no, if I apply one rub-on on top of the other, I'm going to lift off the one underneath, but that doesn't happen. Gently pull this up as before. There we go. So super simple, easy way to add collaging on here. Now the other thing that you can incorporate, of course, are some of your other embellishments like the laser cuts. So again, I've got the two packages of laser cuts. This one is called Essentials. I think this is an essential as well. I just do love these foliage pieces. Now, these are really nice too because Arden makes them so that they are double-sided, which is really nice because then you can decide which way you want the foliage to bend or to which direction you want it to go in. So for example, if I want this to be arching this way or the other way. And this is especially useful when you've got birds or butterflies that are definitely facing one way or the other. Now these will all pop right out of the backing piece. They are laser cut, so they're beautifully delicate. Here's a good example of one that could be going this way, or flip it around and have it going the other way. And these can be added in to create really gorgeous frames. And again, let's have a look here, and you can see that they will pop just right out of that backing sheet. I like to keep all of mine, whether I decide to use them or I kind of play with them and then put them back, keep them in the original packaging. And then that way I know that they all stay nice and flat and don't get crumpled or bent. And then also with this collection, the other essentials, you've also got some fun borders in here, which I've used, and these can create some really nice, easy accent pieces as well. You've got your words and sentiments. Let's see. You can see I've already had some playtime with these. So these are perforated sheets. They'll unfold like so. Here you can see one side and then the other side. Now what I like about these ones, especially with the words, so you've got your word labels on here. They are printed on one side, but on the other side, you've got some room for personalization. So if you want to write your own message on there, maybe you're not embarrassed of your handwriting like I am, and you're happy to add that in there, you can definitely do it that way. So let's see, if I pop this down here and then even just add this little bit. And again, I've got some nice, easy layers already coming together. Let's get my pine bow. Maybe we can tuck this underneath one of these pieces as well. So you can start to see how easily things can layer up. So again, you can add in your distressing techniques for your background papers, and then you can build up from there. So I think I've even got the start of a really fun card. Now I'm going to bring back in my original card, and we can take another look here. So again, I've covered the front of my card with that pattern paper, and then I've used the sponge to go around the outside edges. I've got my peppermint stick striped pattern paper here with some paint distressing on top, and trim that down smaller than the front of my card. I've done some paint edging around here. Then when I glued that down, I like to have things kind of going overlapping the edges. So this beautiful rub-on is overlapping. It's on top of my paint splattered background, overlapping onto this green pattern paper here too. So this is such a gorgeous design. Of course, you can use it as a focal image like I might do on this piece, but you can also have it just tucked underneath as a bit of the background too, which is also fun. Then I've got that beautiful border. So again, one of these borders just tucked underneath here, a little bit of that lace edge showing. On top, I've got one of the tags. So remember, we were looking at the tag earlier and doing some inking around there. In this case, I've done the paint edging. I've got all of my foliage laser cuts. This is, again, a sentiment. This is from the paper pack. So remember, I said all of those beautiful statements and sentiments are perfect for cards. So I've got this here combined with another smaller sentiment. This is popped up on foam tape, so is this one here. I have a little laser cut birdie, and she's popped up on some foam tape. I just thought she was really sweet and had to incorporate her somewhere. And then again, that layered laser foliage on here. I've got one of the epoxy hearts and some epoxy dots here down at the bottom. So I've got paint splattering, I've got rub-ons, I've got paint edging, no inking on this card that I've saved for my layout. So again, let's bring this one back in here. And I think we've pretty much covered our various techniques. It looks like I've made a little bit of a mess here as well. And so don't forget, when you're working with your pattern papers, now something like this, a collection like this, is absolutely gorgeous on its own. I do really love incorporating some very simple mixed media techniques, especially with card making, because I think it just adds another really fun personal touch. So whether you're splattering your backgrounds, you're edging your backgrounds, you're tearing the edges of your backgrounds or inking them, I think you've got some fun inspiration for some different kinds of layouts and cards. And I will also say too, these techniques, again, they are absolutely classic. I know a lot of our very experienced paper crafters have learned these over the years, and you know how versatile they are. So they work not only for these gorgeous Christmas cheer pattern papers and embellishments, but they also work beautifully for heritage style and kind of vintage style everyday pattern papers as well. And if you're a fan of Katie Petit's design style like I am, you probably have noticed that a lot of her papers and embellishments lend themselves really nicely to a bit of extra personalization with distressing techniques. Alrighty, everybody, that is our mini workshop for today. Thank you so much for joining us. And although we have not been live today, we will be reading your comments and questions. So please do feel free to post those in the chat, and we will get back to you as well. Until next time, until next month, I hope you all have a wonderful couple of weeks. I will be off traveling, and then we'll be back with some more inspiration and ideas. And we've got some really fun news to announce for our upcoming lives, and really look forward to doing some more paper crafting, scrapbooking, and card making with you then. Alrighty, everybody, have a wonderful, wonderful week, and I will catch up with you next time. Thank you so much for joining me. Bye-bye.